In exercise science, we have a concept called the bilateral deficit. The concept of the bilateral deficit states that you can lift relatively more with one leg compared to two. See, if I could leg press 100 kilograms with two legs, you would predict I could leg press only 50 kilograms with one leg. But that's not what happens. Instead, with one leg, lifters are usually able to leg press closer to around 60 kilograms than only 50. That is the concept of the bilateral deficit. And there have been dozens and dozens of studies in lifters on the bilateral deficit. Very consistently, people are able to lift more than 50% of their bilateral 1 rep max with just one leg or one arm. And importantly, based on the most recent review papers, that seems to apply both to dynamic contractions and, to a lesser extent, even to isometric contractions, where you stay at the same muscle length. So it's not just a skill thing, there is something physiological about training one limb at a time. But why does the bilateral deficit even exist? Well, researchers have hypothesized different mechanisms, such as greater neural inhibition during bilateral movements and greater postural stabilization demands when you're performing a bilateral movement as compared to a unilateral movement. And this is something that many beginners wonder about. They notice they can lift a lot more when doing alternating curls, or training one side at a time. And many people think that being able to lift more in an exercise will also mean more muscle growth. Bigger compound movements allow you to lift more and build more muscle. But does training one arm at a time or one leg at a time really build more muscle as a result? The true answer is that we don't fully know yet. However, just a few weeks ago, a meta-analysis by Cassiano and colleagues was the first to ever look at the idea of training one side at a time versus both sides at a time and its effects on hypertrophy, strength, and so forth. In total, they included 9 studies comparing single arm training to bilateral training or single leg training to train both legs at the same time. And here were the results. For strength, adaptations were specific. If you usually train with 2 arms, you'll get better at 2-arm outcomes, like 2-arm chin-ups. Whereas if you train with 1 arm, you'll get better at single arm strength. What about hypertrophy? Well, unfortunately, they only found 2 studies that compared single arm training to training both arms at once. So based on those 2 studies, there are no real differences in hypertrophy when training one limb at a time versus training both at the same time. So we do need more studies before we can confidently say whether training one side at a time is better or worse for hypertrophy. So when would unilateral training be a good idea? One great application for single leg training is when you have an injured back. See, when you're doing bilateral movements, like bilateral RDLs, your spine is being loaded quite heavily. If this is you, training one leg at a time can allow you to take about half the weight off your spinal extensors while maintaining hamstring, glute, and adductor stimulus. Another use case is when you have one injured side. Let's say I have an injured knee. Doing single leg extensions allows me to load each side as much as I need to. This can allow you to maintain strength on the injured side better, manage how much you train and how much you stress the knee better, and just allow for better training when you have an injury only on one side. In contrast, if you try to train both sides at once when you have an injury on one side, you may find that you tend to favor your stronger side, leading to reduced stimulus and reduced maintenance of muscle mass and function on the injured side. Another valid reason to use single arm or single leg training on any given exercise is preference. Some lifters just get on really well with some exercises. The single arm preacher curl, for example, feels better for many lifters compared to doing both arms at the same time. Another one is machine rows. Most lifters actually prefer doing machine rows one arm at a time. It allows for a bit more rotation of the core, lateral flexion, a bit more stretch in the lat, and it's just a nice time. Some movements just lend themselves better to single limb, single arm, single leg training for a lot of lifters. Another good reason to use single leg training especially is for extra depth or mobility. Many lifters struggle to go deep while squatting with both legs at once. However, if you adopt a single leg approach instead, for many lifters, you'll be able to go a lot lower than if you use both legs at once. So if going single leg allows you to get deeper, get more range of motion, get more stretch, that will likely be a bit better for hypertrophy. Another example is the pull down. Yes, a bilateral traditional pull down is a solid exercise. But for extra lat stretch, you probably want to have the arm come across the body a bit more, which you can only do with a single arm pull down. Let someone else take care of it. Milo, the coach in your pocket. The smartest coach in your pocket on the market right now. I'm telling you now, there is no smarter app out there right now. There's nothing else like it. We've been working on it for 3 years, and is taking all the latest science on how to build muscle and putting it into an app that costs a fraction of the cost of an actual coach. And it's launching soon. Go to milo.com now to register your interest and be notified when it launches and receive both a free trial and a lifetime discount if you choose to sign up. milo.com, go check it out. Another time to use single leg or single arm training is when you have limited weight available. Let me take you back to my lockdown experience. During COVID lockdowns, all I had available was a barbell and about 40 pounds in plates. The only way I could train legs was with single leg movements. Things like split squats with altered range of motion, single leg remaining deadlifts, pistol squats, and the like. For simple calf training, for example, just doing a single leg bodyweight calf raise might be all you ever need. And going single leg allows you to use a sufficiently heavy load to get close to failure within about 5 to 30 reps. The final use case for single arm or single side training is when you think you have a muscle imbalance. Most of the people who think they have a muscle imbalance are beginners. And in truth, just training consistently and training bilateral movements will be enough to remedy any initial size differences between sides. If after several years of lifting, you still have a quantifiable side-to-side imbalance, feel free to incorporate some single arm or single side training. However, it turns out that most people actually do have some degree of asymmetry side to side. It's totally normal. And there's a good chance, just because you notice a slight asymmetry side to side, doesn't mean anyone else ever will. For example, some of my older clients thought they had a side to side imbalance in their lats, when in reality, it just came down to how they were unable to really flare their lat on one side. That sort of thing happens all the time. So, measuring a quantifiable, consistent difference from one side to the next is a better way to go about things. If you're doing single arm training to remedy an imbalance between your left side and your right side, for example, and you want to catch up the weaker side as fast as possible, doing an extra set or a few at the end for your weaker side can also be a way to accelerate this process. In fact, you can even end things by doing a cheeky little drop set, but only for your weaker side as you finish the exercise to cram in some extra volume and have that side catch up as fast as possible. One common mistake when doing single arm or single leg training and trying to remedy imbalances is to take your stronger side and push it nowhere close to failure. Even if you're trying to remedy size imbalances, you still want to treat your stronger side with respect. Take it just as close to failure, albeit with fewer sets. Here are some of my favorite exercises for single arm or single leg training. The single arm dumbbell preacher curl. It just feels nicer than the bilateral version. The single arm cable ladder raise allows for a bit of extra stretch compared to the bilateral version. The pistol squat. By training one leg at a time, you remove the need for external load, reducing backloading, and with just body weight, you can get a very solid leg workout in. The single leg hip thrust. Instead of needing to load up 3, 4, or 500 pounds, you'll get extra stretch and need to load up far less weight. The single arm dumbbell overhead extension can allow many people with achy shoulders to still get some overhead work in. Split squats often allow you to go deeper than regular squats. We've spoken a lot about unilateral training and when it might be best, but what about bilateral training? Well, in truth, I think bilateral training should be the basis for your program. In most cases, it is simply more practical and time efficient compared to unilateral training. One valid reason to train both arms at once is to save time. Most people dread doing double the sets when training unilaterally. Setting up a cable ladder raise like this, for example, allows you to do only half the sets, while still getting a good stretch. Another valid reason is time efficiency. Needing to do double the sets will make your time efficiency slightly worse. I think this difference is oversold for isolation exercises, however, like the preacher curl, since you don't need that much rest between sets. But for compound exercises, and especially lower body exercises like the split squat, you will be doing substantially more work, burn more calories, and therefore need more rest when doing single leg work compared to training both legs at once. This will mean less time efficiency. So, what exercise would I recommend performing bilaterally, with both arms or both legs being trained at once? Truth be told, most compound movements should likely be performed with both arms or both legs at once. Doing double the sets on compound movements can be a bit time-consuming, fatiguing, and or just annoying. The exception to this rule is for heavy lower body compounds, where going single leg can remove a lot of loading from the lower back and allow you to focus more on your lower body. For isolation movements, I'm more open to single leg or single arm work. However, unless I have a side that is substantially weaker, or I have a preference for a certain movement, I generally avoid it. For your clothing needs, consider Rascal Apparel. Go to rascalapparel.com and use code WOLF at checkout for 10% off and to support me in the process. The best gym clothing in the game.
If you'd like me to coach you, consider taking a look at the link above to see what I offer.
Dr. Milo Wolf, unilateral training. Until next time.